So please welcome from Avid Pro Tools, Jon Connolly.
Thank you. The lone Avid guy, Michael Krulik, pulled a quick one on me the last minute. Hey, come do this event with me. Oh yeah, by the way, I can't make it. You'll be fine. It's a bunch of Final Cut guys. They'll be okay. Which actually is interesting because, the conversation leading up to this point is very Final Cut Avid Premiere, Final Cut Avid Premiere. But all three of those have Pro Tools in common, most likely. If you're doing any sort of serious audio work, it very often ends up in Pro Tools. So, we're kind of the go-between between all those three applications. So,
Which is why we have
Oh, all right, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. So I have about 30 minutes, and I'm going to touch on some of the new things that you may not be aware of with Pro Tools 11 and Pro Tools 12, and I'm going to bring up Pro Tools itself, the application, and briefly go over a couple of things, but at a later time, if you want a full-on Pro Tools presentation or demo, I'm more than happy to come back and do that too, a little more in depth. But so the things that we wanted to cover is the Avid Learning Partner Program. As you mentioned, I work in the Avid Education Department. I am a long-time DigiDesign employee. I started in 1995. October will be 20 years for me. Been laid off twice, but I've survived. I carry on, yeah. So I work in the Avid Education Department. We have over 800 what we call Avid Learning Partners worldwide. We break those down into two different categories that I'm going to cover in just a second. But I wanted to give you a little more background about myself. So I come from a support standpoint, started Pro Tools support in 1995. In 1999, I came down here to LA with the DigiDesign sales team as a product specialist, and I did demos and installations and consulting and all sorts of Pro Tools related things for the music, the TV, and the film industries here. And that was basically LA. And 2011, I was moved into the Avid Education Department, and I travel around quite a bit, and my main gig is to certify instructors at our Avid Learning Partners. So we have a new school coming on board into the Avid Learning program. I go there and I spend a week at a time and brainwash all of their instructors. I pour that Avid Kool-Aid really good. So. And then 2008, one of my layoffs, I started my own company. So I was going to get up and do my announcement earlier. I figured I'd wait. Pro Tools Services. So I do all this stuff on the side. I call it Pro Tools Therapy. It's training, support, installations, consulting, all that stuff on the side as well. So that's my own announcement. So as I mentioned, we have a couple of different types of Avid Learning partners. We have our professionals, which for example, here in LA, we have a few Audiograph, Future Media Concepts. Keycode Media has become an Avid Learning partner recently, so you'll probably hear more about that very shortly. And then on the academic side, we have all of these schools here locally that tend to offer the training and certification over a longer period of time. It might be quarter or semester based, whereas the professionals are usually 2 or 3 day or 5 day courses, short, condensed stuff. And the training that's available through all of them is, of course, Pro Tools and our control surfaces, Icon, S6, the Artist Series, the Artist Mix, and those control surfaces work across the board, Final Cut, Premiere, I think. I don't know. Anybody using any of the artist stuff with Premiere? I'm not sure if that works there or not. So regardless if you're an Avid user or not, these control surfaces might be a benefit to you. Sibelius, which is our music notation application, our live sound consoles, and of course we offer training and certification for all of our Media Composer, ISIS, Interplay, all that good stuff. And last but not least, we have support training that we offer as well, and I teach the Pro Tools Avid Certified Support Rep course. All right, so big announcements recently, Pro Tools first, and we saw earlier hands of people that are using Pro Tools. How about how many people who are not but are interested in using Pro Tools? Okay, that's a good number. So we have this new version of Pro Tools First. It's free. You can go up to the Avid website, log in, And of course, it's a scaled down version of Pro Tools. But the tool set is very much identical to the full-blown versions of Pro Tools. So if you want to get your feet wet with Pro Tools and you don't want to invest a lot of money into it, this is a perfect opportunity for you to do that. And limited to 16 audio tracks. It's kind of aimed at music creation, but you are able to do whatever you want in there. Unfortunately, it doesn't do video. That's one limitation that's kind of a bummer. But these are all the features. I won't go into them in great detail. And up to 3 projects. If you want to add more than 3 projects, this is all cloud-based, this Pro Tools first. No video, as I mentioned, and it's free. You can get that now. Go to the Avid website if you can find it there. Anyway, Pro Tools enhancements. So we wanted to talk about Pro Tools enhancements, but as they pertain to video, folks, because I know that if you are outputting your project for audio sweetening, you've probably come across a couple hurdles in the past. So we've done some things that will hopefully make that transition a little bit easier. You've had maybe sequences kicked back to you for another attempt. So here's a couple of things. These are more general. We'll get to the video stuff in just a second. So Pro Tools 11 is full 64-bit application, starting in 11 and 12, of course, and it's a fully optimized audio engine. We access, as much RAM as your computer can handle, which was an issue before, and we now include a faster than real-time bounce to disk, which if you're doing long format projects, that's a big bonus. And it's all based on the speed of your computer and how complex your timeline is. But you can do a 20-minute, 30-minute sequence in a matter of minutes, which is a big bonus. The last one here, the brand new video engine. So basically what happened there is we decided that QuickTime playback was great, and we've been doing that forever, but we needed to expand our video functionality. So what they did basically is rather than develop all this video functionality, said, hey, wait a minute, we actually have this other application that does video kind of okay. So we're going to take Media Composer and we're going to bolt it under the hood of Pro Tools. Don't tell anybody I said that, by the way. So what's really going on in Pro Tools when you enable this new video engine is it's Media Composer under the hood. When you import a QuickTime video, it's using AMA or the link functionality. But what that really does is it allows you to play back any of the Avid DNX HD video formats natively inside Pro Tools, regardless of whether you have Avid hardware or not. In the past, you needed to have some pretty expensive Avid video hardware on your Pro Tools system to support Avid video. Not necessary anymore. So what that means for you as video editors on Avids is you can export a sequence, link it to the video, Pro Tools will open it up immediately. There'll be no transcoding necessary. And that's a potentially huge time saver for a lot of folks that are exporting sequences to Pro Tools. So, hello, is this thing on? I thought that one would get a response there. No transcoding on export. Of course, we still support QuickTime Video, and we do support the Avid Nitrous DX and Mojo DX hardware on your Pro Tools system. So if you want to have a high-quality video output on your Pro Tools system, we do support that hardware installed inside the system. We also support, since it's Media Composer, we support Blackmagic and Aja video hardware on Pro Tools as well. So if you're using Avid Media Composer with any of the Avid hardware, the Blackmagic or Aja, you can also launch Pro Tools on that same system, use the same hardware. It's kind of a unique thing we haven't done before. Long overdue. All right, no transcoding. We're not into the 2K or 4K thing just yet in Pro Tools, but that's probably coming soon. I knew that was going to be a question. So I wanted to take a poll here and find out what the picture, the image you have in your mind of an audio guy. As a video editor, this is what I might see. I think for a lot of video people, this is more like the audio guy. You walk into this room and there's incense burning. Or on the other end, it's this guy. Hey bro, I'll mix your audio. Well, it's this happy relationship that has to exist that doesn't always exist, unfortunately. So one of my goals here tonight is to help close that gap and give you a little bit of feedback from the audio guy's side. And I know you've probably gotten it before as you're shutting the door to your edit suite, but I got you as a captive audience now. So, this looks familiar. You've all had that roommate who was not the most neatest individual, dirty dishes, the living room. Hate to tell it to you, that's you guys. The sequences we get from you look and smell like this. If I find another gunshot on a dialogue track, I know where all of you live. All right, so this is an ongoing problem, and recently, well, not recently, this is probably 5 or 6 years ago now, I did some work at a local large network television studio. I won't mention their name. Their initials are CBS. And they made a transition into Pro Tools systems, and they have a large number of Avid systems and a small number of Pro Tools systems. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but it was probably 8 video editors for every one Pro Tools. Suffice it to say, those Pro Tools guys were really busy. They were getting a lot of sequences. On any given day, it's a promo department, they might be doing 40 to 80 spots in a day. Cleanup on each one of those spots, and I call it cleanup, that's a nice way of putting it, it was 3 to 5 minutes per sequence that came in. So if we take an average of that, of 4 minutes of cleanup, 3 to 5, that's 4, and we only do a 60 spot day, that was 4 hours a day that the audio guys were spending just cleaning up dirty dishes. So what we did, and this is your truth, have you ever done this? And this will let you know if you are guilty of these common video editor habits. Have you ever put a sound effect on a dialogue track? I don't see any hands. No, it's just quiet. Okay. All right. In the old days, I would give it to you. You only had 4 tracks, 8 tracks of audio to deal with. You had to shoehorn every little sound clip you could find into wherever space you could do it. Not the case anymore. You got plenty of tracks. Don't ever put a sound effect on a dialogue track. I'm going to repeat that. Don't ever put a sound effect on a dialogue track. Have you ever thought the audio guy keeps your mix? Yeah, we do. Wink, wink. There's this really cool feature in Pro Tools where you flip to volume automation and you can wipe out all of the automation in a single keystroke. It's really handy when you open up a video sequence. Do I sound bitter? I'm sorry. How about this one? This is a good one. It's a little more subtle. Put more than one character on the same dialogue track. You got a woman and a man in the same scene and you cram them onto the same audio track. Now, you might think, well, what's the big deal? It's, audio, whatever. When you're spotting that audio onto the track, you have the decision, you have the ability, you're making the decision to put it on this track or this track. For me, when I have to get to it, I have to go through and identify every clip. There's one, pull it down. There's one, pull it down. Very time consuming. If you can, each character goes on its own audio track. All right, here's where we try to fix this problem. Best practices. Have a conversation with the audio person. Someone mentioned this earlier. In advance, work this out. It's going to be a little bit painful. You're going to spend a little bit of time, but it's time well worth it if you iron all this out beforehand. And you'll be thankful that you did. Ask them what video. A lot of times video editors are used, and audio too, this is just human nature, right? You found a method that worked for you at one point, so we still get QuickTime videos at 320 by 240 with a bandwidth of 512K, and it looks great about that big on our screen, and then the producer or the director walks in and goes, why does my video look so bad? Well, it's because the video file we've got is not good. We now have the ability to support all of the high-res video resolutions, QuickTime or Avid DNX HD, find out if your audio person is able to take that. More than likely they are. And this is a conversation, if you're an audio mixer, how many times have you had to explain why the video looks like that when they just walk down the hall from the online suite and it looks quite different? It's a conversation that's quite often, that doesn't need to happen anymore. All right, template. This is kind of a new thing. I don't know that anybody really uses templates for sequences in Media Composer. Maybe they do in Final Cut and Premiere. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with those. But you do have the ability to name the tracks in your Media Composer sequence. If you name those tracks in Media Composer on the left, the import into Pro Tools, and I'm using the same naming scheme in my template, is literally one button press for me. You export it, and it opens up, and all those tracks land on my similarly named tracks in Pro Tools. It's actually really convenient. But the goal here is if you name the tracks on Media Composer side, the idea is maybe if it's named dialogue, you'll put dialogue on there. If it's effects track, you'll put effects there. I don't know. Maybe that will work. I don't know. It's a long shot. All right, here's another one. This is not a big deal, but it's a pet peeve. You got a stereo audio file. Left is always an odd number. He knows what I'm talking about. Left can go on 1 and right can go on 2. It can go on 5 and 6, but it can never go on 6 and 7. When it lands in Pro Tools, it's like, what was... Anyway, here's another one, not quite as crucial. If you're rendering audio files, make sure you include the original too. The decision that you make on your rendered file may not be, likely not, the same as your audio mixer, and he or she will love you for the ability to go back to that original audio and re-render it if necessary. And last but not least, give them a big hug and buy them a beer. It'll be much better afterwards. Okay, all right, so I'm going to get into Pro Tools software just a little bit. I know there's a few Pro Tools users. I'm going to make this quick. And I wanted to do something that I don't know if it's going to go over well or not, compression, audio compression. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I know people are always trying to get more out of their dialogue, right? You have a sequence and you've got this dialogue in the session and it's just not standing out the way you want it to. How do I make that do it? Well, compressor. Someone says, put a compressor on there. Well, that's cool. There's a bunch of knobs in there, but they don't make sense to me. So I was going to put a little bit of dialogue on there, or compression on a dialogue piece, and just give you a couple quick tips on how that works and how it can work for you to just get some quick results out of whatever. But dialogue's typically the one that is the issue. All right, so let me switch over here. So here's my promo template that I created based on the template that we created in Media Composer. I'm stepping back here to give you a little presentation of that too. So I'm going to call it promo template example. I'll dump it on my desktop here. And the track layout is very much the same that I would see on a Media Composer. This is going to vary. Your workflow is going to be different, but I've put 4 dialogue tracks, two mono effects tracks, and 2 stereo effects tracks, and 2 stereo music tracks. Now, when I go in and bring in the AAF export from Media Composer that had that really cleverly named template there, there's the no-no sequence. I'm going to open it up. And on the left, the source is all of the tracks from Media Composer sequence. And on the right is the destination. There's nothing in there. It's going to bring it into Pro Tools and create a new track until I hit this little Match Tracks button, and it automatically lines them all up. I click OK, and my dialogue lands on dialogue tracks, my effects lands on effects tracks, and music lands on music tracks. So if I didn't do that, I could have spent 2-3 minutes easily, depending on how long the sequence. It could be 10, 15 or more just to go sort all that stuff out. So huge time saver. Thank you.
Yeah. That's cool.
All right. So requires a little, prep in advance. Anyway, so Pro Tools is basically designed on 2 windows. The idea was to make the transition for these old school audio engineers coming from a tape deck and a mixer. We wanted to make that transition into Pro Tools very easy. So if you look at your edit window, that's your tape deck. And if you look at your mixer, that's your mix window. If you've ever dealt with a mixer at any size, it could be your little Mackie mixer or whatever, the concept here is very much the same. Up is loud, down is soft, and you've got solo and mute buttons pretty straight ahead. I won't spend a lot of time there, but I do want to cover the edit window. So think of this as your sequence or your timeline in Media Composer or Final Cut. We've got a list of tracks here on the far right. We've got a list of all of my clips that are currently in this session. But what I really want to show you is the Smart Tool. And they tried to implement this on the video side a couple versions back, and I don't think it landed well because I don't know that it was fully implemented correctly. But this is the way that it was supposed to work, and you tell me if it works for you or not. So I have this clip. I'm going to hit one single key to zoom that out. No, I'm not. There it is. Okay, so I've got this clip of dialogue, and I've enabled the Smart Tool. You might notice that looks a little bit familiar, but horizontal as compared to the Media Composer version. If I place the cursor at the end of the clip, it turns into my trim tool. Let me get out of grid mode. I'll go to slip, and I can easily trim up the top of this clip, or I can trim up the back end. And if I go to the upper right corner, it's a fade out. Just click and drag. There's a fade. And there's the upper left corner, fade in. Drop my cursor anywhere I want to. I can make a selection. If I go to the lower half of the clip, it's the hand or the grabber tool. I can move that clip forwards and backwards or onto a new audio track. Drop my cursor, make an edit. If I have 2 adjacent clips, I put the cursor down in the lower left or right corner, and there's my crossfade. So I can access a whole handful of tools without actually having to change the tool manually. Of course, if I hold down the control key, I can scrub on that as well. So that's a very short tutorial of the Smart Tool, and that will save years off of your audio editing life. I don't know that it works that well on the Media Composer side, but that was the goal. So that's my Smart Tool. All right, so I have this clip now, and I have a compressor on there. I put it over here on the mix window. Actually, no, I don't have it on there. So that's Dialog 2. I'm going to use the same real-time audio suite plugin that you can find in Media Composer. Dynamics, Dyne 3 compressor limiter. All right. So this principle applies to anything. It's not limited to Pro Tools. It's not limited to Media Composer. If you have an audio compressor, the concept is the same regardless if it's Final Cut or not. You got a bunch of knobs here, but there's really 2 that you really need to be concerned with. It's the threshold and the gain. And the ratio, everything else set at its default is normally okay, especially for dialogue. If you use too much compression, you'll kill it and it will sound dead and lifeless. And you want to balance using a little bit of compression to get more life out of it. You don't want to use too much and kill it. All right, so I'm bypassing it. Here's what it sounds like. Let me see if I can get some audio here.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
All right, so it's off, and I'm going to unbypass it. And basically what I need to do is I need to find the threshold. The goal here is to capture the peaks, just the peaks, reduce the volume of those peaks so that I can increase the overall volume. If I don't reduce the peaks and I turn the volume up, I'll get clipping on those peaks, right? So a compressor threshold is going to identify the peaks and it will allow me to bring the whole thing up. So what I want to look at is the gain reduction threshold. This sounds crazy, but just watch, it's not so bad.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
This orange is telling me when the compressor is actually doing its job.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
Compressor is doing nothing right now.
Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
Bring the threshold down.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
There's overkill. I'm compressing the life out of it. So what I try to shoot for is this orange light should come on about 50% of the time. I'm going to take it back up.
Would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
So I see this blinking on and off, roughly 50%.
Jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that.
It's a short loop. I should have made it longer. So I play it with the compressor on.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
Now I'm going to bypass it.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
So it's subtle, but in the difference of your mix, a compressor will allow you to get more gain out of it. The other thing I can do now in Pro Tools as well is clip gain, which is something that was available in Media Composer, and I'm sure Final Cut probably has it too. It's another gain on the clip itself. There's a little volume fader down at the bottom. I can click it and drag it up and increase the gain right there. Now, of course, my compression settings are going to be shot now because I changed the gain of the clip, but that's another way to change the gain on a per clip basis inside Pro Tools. So you can go through really quickly and change dynamically the gain here. So it's like, okay, that little bit right there, I can see the peak at the bottom. I'm gonna take that down. This is a little bit hot here. So this is another way to achieve that same kind of result. I'm leveling out all my peaks. And a peak can be on the bottom as well as the top, right? Because the audio is a waveform based on the center line. So I'm reducing peaks and kind of leveling out my audio this way. So that's another way to accomplish this. And you can see how the waveform is affected, which makes it very easy to see your results quickly. So that's my 2-minute overview on compression and clip gain. Thank you very much. All right, so what was my other topic there? I had limiting, right? So limiting is basically, and I'm gonna make this super quick, it's another form of compression. I want my overall project to be louder. So for music people, this is really common. They'll record a song and they'll mix it and it sounds great, and they compare the volume of their song to a commercially purchased CD, and the CD music is incredibly much louder than their music. So how do you deal with that? Well, limiting is basically what it is. And Pro Tools has not only a compressor stock with it, just like the one I showed you, but it also has a limiter built into it. So if I put a master fader on this session, that means everything in the session is running through this fader. I can put a maximum, dynamics maximum. And someone mentioned earlier about presenting their sequences with an audio mix that's more presentable for whoever the client or the director or the producer might be. This is a quick way to get some results out of it. Of course, it's not really something you can do in Media Composer yet, but Pro Tools you can. So here's my sequence.
It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
There's that gunshot on the dialogue track. Wanted to make you guys feel at home. Okay, so we have a very simple sequence here. The music is very low. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. But overall, the level is not strong enough, so I'm just going to put this Maxim plug-in on here, and it does two things, and it's really easy to use. The ceiling is the important thing. That basically means I don't want any volume to go louder than what my ceiling is. So I usually set it at like half a dB down, right? -5. I can't do it with my trackpad there, but -5. Minus 0.5 of a dB. That's as loud as it will get. And as I bring this threshold down, the overall volume will increase, but it will never pass that
ceiling. It is curious that Harrison would commandeer a jump ship.
Ooh, that's too loud, sorry. That's not static, that's actually a sound effect that one of you put in there. I'm going to mute that. All right, so the point of the maxim limiter is it limits your overall audio output so that you don't clip, and it gives you another fader just to bring down, and as you bring it down, it increases the overall volume, so you get a nice big fat signal out of there. So if you want some quick results and get some nice big audio signals out of your mixes, maxim is a way to do it, and it's really ideal on a master fader. So that would be a Pro Tools thing. So remember, when you're in Media Composer at least, you can export an AAF sequence, link to audio, link to video, and export now is really, really fast because there's no transcoding needed to get that video into Pro Tools. And you can do it on the same system. For those of you that are doing your audio as well as your video, it can be quicker. It's a matter of closing Media Composer, open up Pro Tools, link to that same media, and get to work.